In the last podcast, I spoke about how Covaxin, Covishield, and Sputnik V work. It is natural to wonder how effective these vaccines are. Today's podcast is about that and also about pointing out some details one should be aware of. There is a term called efficacy that will come up a lot over here, so I should explain what that really means. For instance, when a vaccine trial reports an efficacy of 60% in preventing an undesirable outcome, it implies that if and when a vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus, there is a 40% likelihood of that outcome. A vaccine trial reports the efficacy after testing the vaccine in a small subset of the population. The three vaccines have reported varying levels of efficacy in preventing different outcomes. Covaxin and Covishield have reported an efficacy of around 81% against symptomatic COVID, while Sputnik V has reported an efficacy of 91% against lab confirmed infection. This kind of efficacy is already beyond expectation. To give an idea, the annual flu shot has an efficacy of 40 to 60% in preventing flu illness. My intention is to make the listeners aware of what the clinical trials have reported. But vaccines should not be considered inferior or superior based on the efficacy metric, because this depends on factors such as the caseload of the location that the trial was conducted in. So it would be inappropriate to compare vaccines based on the efficacy number unless the trials were conducted in the exact same conditions, which is not the case with these three vaccines. The most important feature that these vaccines share in their trials is the efficacy of 100% against severe disease. The severity of COVID is the only thing that is the problem. So I would urge everyone to get whichever vaccine is available. There are a few things that need to be taken note of. 1. Vaccines don't work immediately. Covishield and Sputnik start to be protective 21 days after the first dose, and for Covaxin, this is 14 days after the second dose. So one can develop a severe infection if exposure occurs anytime before that. COVID appropriate behavior is the only savior in this time frame. 2. Some people have tested positive for COVID a few days after vaccination. But let this not make you think that the vaccine caused it. They got exposed shortly before, during, or shortly after getting the jab. Vaccines are incapable of multiplying and causing an infection the way pathogens do. 3. Even after being fully vaccinated, vaccines don't stop you from being infected and from being contagious. One can unknowingly infect a non vaccinated person, which could lead to a severe infection or even death for that person. So, COVID appropriate behavior is going to be just as important as it always has been. 4. It needs to be pointed out that in the real world scenario, vaccines may not offer 100% guarantee of preventing severe disease and death due to COVID 19. And this has been seen in a few people who have been fully vaccinated. The exact reason for this is not known so far. There could be multiple possible factors that might explain this. I will keep that for another podcast. But this further underlines the need to follow COVID appropriate behavior until the pandemic comes to an end, regardless of your vaccination status. Having said that, vaccines induce a significant immune response that protects a large percentage of the population. Based on the data that is available to us and on experts' opinions, a vaccinated person is much better off than someone with no immunity to COVID.